All right, I want to switch topics. I want to transition into Joe Montana had some very interesting things to say. Joe Montana, who's never, ever been outspoken. Joe Montana, who, most people flopped as a TV broadcaster. Very interesting and outspoken things to say about Colin Kaepernick. He jumped into the deep end of the pool and into some real controversy here, in my opinion. Here's arguably the greatest quarterback in NFL history, certainly the greatest quarterback in 49ers history, saying this about Colin Kaepernick to the Sporting News. You look at Tim Tebow, great guy, and everybody was talking about him. But what it comes down to is 40% completion or even in the low 50s. You can't win in the league with that. You won't be in the league very long. It comes down to his play as much as anything. Everyone thinks it is the stance he took. One of the things you don't look for is distractions in the locker room. You can go back to Bill Walsh, and as soon as there were guys that weren't fitting in and weren't fitting in what he was looking for, it didn't matter how good you were. You weren't on the team for very long. You have to have people who want the same thing, fighting for the same thing, and willing to put the time in. This is my point. Football people that are just arguing about football, they're done with Colin Kaepernick. This is the San Francisco 49ers' greatest ambassador, greatest player to ever play for the 49ers, has access to whatever amount of information is available about Colin Kaepernick. He has access to it because of his standing in that community and with that team. He has analogized Kaepernick to the guy I analogized Kaepernick to when this whole thing started last September, Tim Tebow. And everyone's like, oh, it's the stance. Oh, it's racial discrimination. This is football speaking. It's not about race. 70% of the league is black. Several black players in that league, including Malcolm Jenkins, raised black fists all last year during the national anthem. They protested. You had St. Louis Rams players the year before come up with hands up, don't shoot symbols. They're still in the league. All this Kaepernick is being blackballed. There are all kinds of players. Joe Montana just said it. This is factual, who have the talent to play in the NFL, but the NFL says, you know what? I'm done with you. You're not all in. You're too much of a distraction. We don't want to be bothered with it. The reason why this bothers me so much, and the reason why I've been so outspoken, I grew up with Jeff George. I could make the argument he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the history of football, and there are football people that will back me up on it. The NFL got tired of Jeff George and basically canceled him at age 34. More talent, more production than Colin Kaepernick ever hoped to have in the NFL. Jeff George was Rookie of the Year. One year he threw 29 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He carried the Vikings on a nice playoff run. Didn't get him to the Super Bowl, and I know Kaepernick did. But again, the NFL said, you know what? We don't want you anymore, even though he had tremendous talent and still had the ability to help some teams. Tim Tebow, not that talented, but talented enough to be on an NFL roster. The NFL said, you know what? We don't want you anymore. We don't want to deal with questions about you when you're our backup quarterback. We don't want to deal with all of your sycophants and fans who want to see you out there, even though we have a quarterback we're committed to. We don't want to deal with your passive-aggressive BS that Tim Tebow did, and the NFL said goodbye to Tim Tebow, and I cheered that. I was never on the Tim Tebow bandwagon. I was on the Colin Kaepernick bandwagon. Early in his career with Jim Harbaugh, and when he came in, I'm friends with Alex Smith. I wasn't at the time, but I was all for Kaepernick taking Alex Smith's job. And so I used to be all in with Kaepernick. But as a football person, and again, the things he wants to support and the way he wants to go about supporting those things, I got some disagreement about. It's not, his heart's in the right place, his execution is bad. But as a football person, I get why football is done with Colin Kaepernick. It's not because, these bigoted NFL owners, and they just can't stand Colin Kaepernick and what he stood for. That ain't it. It's what Joe Montana said right here. You can go back to Bill Walsh, and as soon as there were guys that weren't fitting in what he was looking for, it didn't matter how good you were. You weren't on the team for very long. You have to have people who want the same thing, fighting for the same thing, and willing to put in the time. And what he's basically saying, particularly at the quarterback position, you want people who are all in on football. Listen to what Bill O'Brien said about Tom Brady.
One of the most difficult jobs you can have is coaching Tom, because he wants to be coached. Yeah. You coach him every single day, all year round. The reason why he is what he is because he's obsessed with football. When you're coaching him, you better be ready to go at a moment's notice, whether it's for a meeting or practice or game, and it made me a much better coach.
That's, again, is every quarterback like Tom Brady? No. But you damn sure better be if when you sign up for a team, there's a press circus following you. If you're going to be that big of a headache and the baggage of having you includes a bunch of questions from the press that don't have a damn thing to do with football, you better be Tom Brady. You better be all in on football. You better be obsessive about the game and prepared better than any other player. That's when they'll put up with the other bogus BS that goes along with you. If you're just a guy, if you're a borderline starter or a backup, the NFL ain't got time for you if there's a bunch of baggage. That's been with white players, black players, Samoan players, Latino players, whomever. Joe Montana, I guess people are probably ripping him on the internet and calling him every kind of bigot and racist in the world because he spoke the truth about Colin Kaepernick. I know Joe Montana. He ain't got no problem with black people. None at all.